All right, welcome everyone at the Multi-Network Community Sync. Today is December 6th, and I've just added like few small items to talk about. I have updated, maybe let's go one by one. The discussion that we had for the last 2 weeks for the CAP, the kind of revised the list of requirements and basically user stories as well, because that's kind of indirectly targeted those. And I have updated the official CAP currently. The PR is in its reduced scope. Maybe show you that. Share this tab for a second. So the stories, number of stories are reduced. Just the 3 phases, the number 4 phase is removed. So what happened is along the stories, what I have removed was the 2 stories that were here about hot plug. There were hot plug for interface and hot plug for IP. Those 2 stories kind of have been, I removed those. And then the number 6 story, this one was talking about the um, applying profiles to default to namespaces, which I just basically removed, and so make sure that I can have the multi-tenancy aspect, where in specific namespace I'm connecting to just a specific interface, but nothing about the automated ways of doing that. Right before we were saying that maybe we can have some sort of profiles for namespaces, which will then hard code it to how the user attached to the specific namespace. I removed all that aspect, right? So right now it's just simplified, where we just want to have the single interface with all the functionalities in place. So that's story number 6. And then as we revise, this is all the revised requirements. Phase 1 didn't change much. Phase 2 got reduced quite extensively. Because we moved some things to phase 3, and then we removed some other tasks, and then just phase 3 is basically keeping what it was, most of the stuff, and then phase 4 went out. What I did as well, so for the sake of kind of not losing my work on my fork, if you were to, I think the link to this page, it's on in the minutes. But if you go to my fork here, I think you should have access to this. I created an old multi-networking branch, which then, I don't remember the link, give me a sec. Basically the old branch will have the old stuff, so we don't lose it. Where are you here? Yeah, all the stories and basically all the phases are still here. So I saved the previous version so we don't lose it, and it's there on the GitHub. So when we want to come back to this, we always can, and it's not lost. So there is that part. Any questions to that? So, and I will maybe go to the next step, which is this share this tab. So this is I think the presentation I was referring to on what things kind of has to happen. I've slightly color coded of complexity of the items that I think of. Basically, all the green ones are kind of light and very easy. The biggest, I think, item is the IPS server, and then the KCM changes the new controller that needs to be added. So those are the things that kind of think with phase 1, but as well I have drew up changes that needed for the later phases, right? So we have changes for the phase 2, and this is just projections, of course. So this phase 2 is about RBAC and the downward API. So I think this is not the big deal, and this thing will happen in just those 2 elements. I this is just a projection, as I mentioned, but I think just that. And then phase 3, we have API server for network policy, API server itself for the access for the API access connectivity for the non-default pod network. This is quite a bigger one. We need to think of how we're going to do that. That's in the future. Then kubelet, the probing, and then same thing about the API access. I'm not sure where that would happen, whether that's going to be in kubelet or API. And then network policies, and then these services, which I kind of call out that is outside of Kubernetes, and that will be done through the Gateway API, hopefully. So that's the kind of stuff that we have ready for discussion with everyone who's kind of talking about the complexity. Next things, any questions to this? All right, let's move on. So yeah, the other thing is the DRA feedback. Let me maybe share this up. So I pinged Patrick, but unfortunately he has some meeting conflict at that time, so he couldn't attend. But he, in his email, kind of replied on what was his experiences about this one. Let me just maybe find that email and read it to you. Where was it? He said that it, because I asked him about the complexity, that it definitely come up for DRA, and he addressed this by carefully explaining again and again why some particular API or design choices are needed, and went through and with the use cases that cannot be satisfied otherwise. And one thing that he's mentioning, that he had a working prototype that he always could show, and basically based on that kind of prove that it's not so bad. So I think that's the main thing that I'm taking out of what he wrote, to have an experiment on what basically a prototype of what the KEP is. So this is something that I started looking into myself as well. And basically, maybe this is something that we can talk, because
do you have an idea of what this should what should be the scope of such a prototype in terms of?
I think, to be honest, let me look at let me show, maybe that's a good point. Let me share this stuff. Because this is basically the list of items that has to happen, right?
But my question was more, is it only a Kubernetes prototype, so showing that those changes can work within Kubernetes, or should it also show usage for given CNI or
like
some kind of?
implementation, let's say with
Yeah.
Multus, what Pete did. I think what we definitely can do is move up to the Multus kind of approach, right? Where we could have whatever Pete did and expand on it, or kind of slightly adjust to the new APIs that we have, right? And basically have the whole end-to-end stuff, right, with Multus. Because what we want to do here with this one is introduce the object, which I currently adapted. So I have my branch about the multi-network implementation. So I last week pushed the version of the pod in the ways that we finalized on. So I have updated that one. I didn't add the attachment object. This is something that I want to do next, to add the attachment. So that's the next thing. And basically, most of those items, I'm not sure whether they're extensive or not. So when you say about scope of prototype, I probably, when I'm gonna start doing this, I probably gonna just do all item one by one, and basically want to kind of ping you folks. Anyone wants to kind of join in and pick any of this kind of to divide and conquer this? Not sure
I don't
about
know
your bandwidths, about how much you can engage. That's all, of course, up to your subject, to your availability. But if we want to, if someone wants to kind of join in, you're welcome. Let me know, and we can kind of divide and conquer that, so that we don't kind of work on the same thing together.
I think I'd be happy to join, but I have a huge asterisk on my time upcoming. So yeah, I don't want to overcommit, essentially. So,
Sure. No, that's perfectly fine. And basically, I started doing some of it. Because I'm gonna be offline for the next month or so soon, myself as well. So whatever I'm gonna do, I try to finish and push up to the same branch as well. But yeah, that's my next kind of thing of my kind of destination, to add stuff and create a prototype, right? Basically implement implement the cap as we see it, right? Have the pod objects, look at the flag at least, right, as well, for the whole feature, and then base everything on the flag. I'm looking at the DRA implementation. That's good, because DRA kind of shows how they did all this, and that's my kind of pattern on what I need to change, and where and how they did some of the things. So I am following them on some of the implementation. This is a good example, and basically doing my changes as well. I think there was another question someone was asking. Said, Doug, was it you? No. Okay. Yeah, basically of scope, as I mentioned, we have the object. I want to introduce some of the mechanics for mechanism for how the object behaves. Definitely want to have the scheduler, the controller, and the object. So basically the scheduler, so that we have a controller for the conditions handler, so that we can treat ready, not ready, and basically based on that have some scheduler changes. Have the pod changes in as well. So basically most of those things I would like to add in. Maybe kubelet and endpoint slice, those are like additional things that are extra. We don't have to have those, but default pod network deletion, we don't have to need that, but and validations. But add the objects, change the pod, change the scheduler a bit, and then add the controller for the conditions. So basically that's kind of would provide because the other things I think is just usability tweaks and enhancement, but the core functionality will be just that. Yep. That's any comments or questions on this? All right. So I think that's all I had in terms of topics. Any other topics come to mind, folks? If not, then I think we can call it. Give you 40 minutes back.
Hey Monte, so are you expected to be out next week?
It's in the air right now.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll be ready to take hold if you're not
Sure.
there. But yeah.
I will reach out to you, Dak, if anything. Okay.
Okay, that sounds great. Awesome.
All right, folks. See you if anything next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.